at least for the first 16 weeks. Okay? So that's important to make note. And I'll turn it over to Heidi, and she'll just talk more about the role of the FAR.
Very briefly, to kind of bring this section to an end and to share a little campus perspective with folks from the registrar and FAR perspective, I think is important as we talk about. It's clear we're going to have a role going forward. I think that's very clear that the FAR and the registrar, athletic director, coaches will have a very important role as the NAIA rolls out the Eligibility Center. So we have a role, we'll continue to have a role. I don't think we need to worry about that from the campus perspective. Just about 5 things that I think are important to just take away with us today. It's here. The NAIA Eligibility Center is here in its glory and perhaps some of its challenges, but we need to embrace it as an important part of the NAIA and the work we do. So it's here, so let's embrace it and give it our best shot. The second thing is how we work with students, and I think that we kind of have all referred to this today, how we work with students prior to their experience in the Eligibility Center, during their experience in the Eligibility Center, and after their experience in the Eligibility Center hasn't changed. And it won't change. We'll continue to do the same kinds of things that we do for our student athletes on our campuses going forward. This is a tool that we'll use to do that work, that important work. The third thing, it hasn't relieved our responsibility to do our due diligence at the campus level, to look at the documents that we're going to see after they've been in the Eligibility Center that are going to appear out of nowhere suddenly, that will be discovered accidentally in some cases. So our due diligence will stay the same, and that's important for us to remember. What will be helpful, I think, is that the Eligibility Center will help us to make the tough decisions that we've had to make on the fly at the campus level, and to make those tough decisions in advance. So we won't have to ruminate about those. They'll make those decisions, and the rulings have an opportunity to be vetted earlier in the process, which I think is really important. And that might speed up our campus evaluation of student-athlete participation eligibility. I think the other thing that's important to remember is that the Eligibility Center and we are going to be partners. So let's be in touch with them. Let's communicate together. Let's talk together. We need to work together to make this work. So that'll be paramount going forward. So thanks. Scott.
A question comes in from Grandview, Midwest Collegiate Conference, I believe. How does the NAIA eligibility determination impact emerging sports such as men's volleyball, bowling, cheer and dance, those kinds of activities or sports?
That's a great question. We've had several discussions about emerging sports and how they impact and if they are required to register with the Eligibility Center. And at this time, those prospective students are not required to register with the Eligibility Center. So their certification will take place on campus, and it's up to that institution to determine the eligibility and their eligibility requirements for those students.
Specifically to cheer and dance, very likely it will be recognized as a national championship level sport or sports this coming year. Would that be true as well for cheer and dance, or are we talking only about true emerging sports?
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, I wanted to talk about competitive cheer and dance because that is a sport that may likely become a championship sport in this year, and that is the distinction, really. The point at which the sport becomes a championship sport is the point at which students will have to register. So what we're trying to do with competitive cheer and dance is we don't want students to have to register before we know for sure that they are going to have to register. So we're waiting until May for the declarations from the institutions to tell us whether it will in fact be a championship sport. And we're trying to keep the competitive cheer and dance coaches well advised on that point and basically saying to them, be ready, so that if it turns out that it is a championship sport, then you should bring those students into the system as quickly as you possibly can, and we're committed to you, Coach, to process those as quickly as we possibly can. So we know it's a little challenge there, but our feeling was we should err on the side of the students' perspective to not bring them into the system if they don't have to be brought in.
Great, John. Appreciate that. We're going to do one more question, and then we're going to go through our closing here. This one comes from one of our participants here in the room today, Carlene Tyler from McPherson College. Her question is, when a student registers with the Eligibility Center, do they also sign a release about FERPA regulations?
Yes, they do. Yeah, it's part of their registration process to basically provide the same kinds of releases they're providing to you on your campus.
All right. Well, we've approached the end of our time. I'm going to let John, Marcus, Angela, any final comments, and then I have a few points of clarification about where to find this broadcast later on. But anything you'd like to share as a last-minute conversation?
Well, I would just add that we do encourage you to communicate with us. We want to be able to answer your questions and to be there for you if you're having any concerns or just need some help working through a situation with a student. So email us anytime at ecinfo@naia.org. We get back to emails same day. Or call us 816-595-8300. Again, as John said, we do have some people dedicated just to making sure they're there to answer your questions on staff right now. And then we encourage you to go to playnaia.org because we have a lot of resources available to you there and to students, and look around at some of the different sections of the website to find information and hopefully get some of your questions answered that way.
And Scott, I'll just end by again offering our thanks to all of you in the room here and on the web for taking part in this discussion today. Terribly helpful from our perspective. I also want to note that some of the information we've given today is new information because of changes in policies that have been recently enacted, and I want you to know those are because of the kinds of questions and concerns that you all are raising. Coaches have done a terrific job of helping us to understand some of the challenges that are out there on the ground, and I hope that we're doing a good job of responding and making some policy changes in accord with those kinds of concerns. So thanks again to the KCAC for hosting us. Really appreciate the opportunity.